Hello, it's a Friday yet again. It's July 15, 2022, and you're watching the Awesome 10X Global Market Update. Let's begin with me sharing my screen on market observations for this week. Okay, let's go for that. For July 15, we do not change our views. We remain bearish and short. Today is July 15. It is an options expiry date, and we expect the markets to largely be on the downside. Let me read to you a few notes though. Despite me going, which would share to you a lot of negative news, I would share that there are a few things that are still worth good news sharing about. Okay. So, of course, many of you know that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have joined hands for almost a decade already, since 2006, more than a decade, really to solve many of this world's issues and donating most of their wealth towards this global challenges. For them, the biggest secular trend remains solving climate change and the food crisis. It is going hand in hand. The energy and food crisis isn't simply just to solve inflation today, but in my view, it really is a shortage of production. So, for all things said and done, I do and believe of the belief that humanity and kindness prevails. So, this is a good tweet shared by Mr. Bill Gates, and I wanted to just read to you a few of these. So, what would be his advice to young people? And he said that he was always excited for the next chapter, no matter if that next chapter had a lot of problems. So, a few things, no? So, on July 13, Bill Gates tweeted that several huge global setbacks have really left many people discouraged on whether the world is destined to get worse. You've had the pandemic, you've got the war in Ukraine, you've got this damage in the climate that is already worse than most models have been predicting. And the US today has gone a step backwards towards gender equality, women's health. You've probably heard about the Roe v. Wade getting overturned. Now, as he looks to the future, though, he plans to invest or basically give away all of his wealth towards the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as the contributions from Warren Buffett. For the next 5 years, they have already allocated $40 billion. So far, they've already contributed $76 billion over the last 20 years. About 15 years, you could see. The Gates Foundation formally launched with a total of $22.9 billion. And since 1994, the Bill Gates have contributed $39 billion. Warren Buffett gave about $36 billion. So that is since 2006. So together, that's about $76 billion that these two individuals have been have been spending to solve a lot of problems in mainly in healthcare. You could see that they spent about $1.5 billion last year fighting the pandemic, and they believe that they would spend about $40 billion in the next 5 years solving a lot of health crisis. We can see that in one interview as well, Bill Gates was asked what would be the greatest challenge for the next 4 decades and how will we overcome it. Today, Bill Gates is about 66 years old. So there's a lot of challenges that he believes. And one of the biggest would be climate change. Political polarization is another big one. How do we save humanity to minimize wars and violence? And how do we solve it where information is now flowing around the world in an interconnected, viral way, sometimes the good and sometimes the bad? A few things that we can also see from his tweets. As of July 8th, Bill Gates, of course, has greeted CRISPR a 10th birthday, one of the most important inventions in medicine, biology, and agriculture. I do believe that this technology, this CRISPR-Cas9, has been saving a lot of lives and would play a really huge role over time. We have been discussing to most of the Awesome 10X members that this year we are already seeing outperformance in healthcare, in particular the genomics. So I am also going to share to you a few charts on that. But I'm not surprised if Bill Gates would be adding more to his Schrodinger position, and he would probably be adding and investing in the next 5 years furthermore towards affordable, attractive, and clean energy technologies. So we've already discussed that Bill Gates have been a huge believer in the electric vehicles. He's also a big believer of nuclear power plants, a big believer, of course, of waste management and really solving the world's largest problems. We don't disagree, and I'll show you a few more about those things. Uh, Either way, I like his advice. He said that if he was gonna talk to his younger self, you read a lot, you discover a skill that you really enjoy. For others, that means just being great at science or simply being a great communicator. But the point is to do good in the world. Here in Awesome 10X, we may have different views about your opinions in the world, but I really do hope that with the free Friday classes, I help you give you better information for free and better decision making, whether or not you're an Awesome 10X member. So, of course, every Friday, that's only the time that I get to talk to you. So, I don't know what's happening in your portfolios on a Monday to Thursday. But I hope that you are doing well. And I hope that we have helped you to avoid pitfalls in this market sell off. One of the things that Bill Gates has shared, of course, is that in the first 100 days, there was 106,000 deaths. And he was saying, what if we actually stopped COVID after 100 days? We would have probably saved 98% of the lives that were lost, which were about 6.7 million. That is total lost lives. We're not even counting the people who, of course, had comorbidity problems, those who are still, they were in the hospital and they just got cured. And even so, even if they were cured, there might be other symptoms that aren't really still revealed so far. Nonetheless, we have to say though that the effectivity and the fast vaccination of the world has contributed, of course, to saving lives. So if we could really see that a fast response from the governments worldwide and the people themselves to get vaccinated as quick as possible, um, that would really be helpful. No? So those are just a few things to share. Now, I think Gates is saying this because in the next 40 years, if we will survive as a world, we do have to address a lot of the symptoms and the repercussions of what happened during the pandemic. We haven't really finished all the mental health problems, depression, and the repercussions, obviously, of staying only at home for the last 2 years. And it's only been now that most people are able to go out and travel without their masks, easing of quarantine rules. Yet, of course, there are, of course, these problems that remain. Let's talk about the problems and just market data for you. The European car sales just slumped to the worst since 1996. Aston Martin had to turn to Saudi for funding. So 200 million they got, which really diluted Aston Martin shareholders because they've got supply chain troubles, inflation that continues to batter the car industry. This reminded me just how difficult this EV battle will be, because if you've got these semiconductor shortages, high inflation risks, even if the ICE or the internal combustion engines were to be displaced by EVs, you wonder how many people can actually afford to replace their cars in the next 20, 30 years. That said, though, so you've got that huge problem of high raw mats and high energy costs. This is why we are shorting Albemarle, which is the largest lithium miner in the world, as we also foresee that there will be lower demand for electric vehicles in general. And it isn't just in the smaller vehicles, actually, even in the likes of Tesla. So we have an active short over even in Tesla, and a little on Neo, Tesla, and the Albemarle, or the lithium miner. Saudi Arabia got a board seat at Aston Martin, injecting 200 million pounds. Okay, so to take a 20% stake in the luxury car brand. As you notice, Saudi Arabia now is one of, I guess Saudi Arabia loves luxury. Saudi Arabia already has a huge stake on Lucid, a huge stake now in Aston Martin, and of course, Saudi Arabia has a huge stake in Tesla as well. China's recovery is still in doubt. Official data actually showed expansion in GDP. However, indicators suggest that the GDP in China have actually shrank in the quarter. Travel data was mostly below last year's level in July. Car purchases was actually more than 10% lower. Activity only began to improve in June, obviously after the Shanghai started to reopen. Industrial output rose 4% in June. Retail sales grew a bit of 3%. However, this contracted 7% in May. Unemployment rate in China eased to 5%, but that is still very high, with the jobless rate right now for 16 to 24-year-old Chinese now at a new record of 19%. Home prices are falling as well in China, although this is still very low at just 0.1%. This only tells you that China's zero COVID policy and their lockdowns are obviously detrimental to their economy. And while Beijing has promised to stimulate the economy, we've been seeing left and right layoffs in Alibaba, Tencent, and more layoffs, not just in tech, but actually in other parts of the country. Particularly, the mortgages are having a problem. So you're already seeing a lot of real estate mortgage getting defaults, unable to pay, and that could be a contagion within, which is still brewing in China. We want to discuss a few things. This is Starbucks is going to report by August 2, 2022, a couple of weeks from now. We are largely bearish about all these earnings going forward, especially all of your consumer discretionary items. A few things to understand. This was the first quarter 2022. And in the first quarter 2022, you used to have Mr. Kevin Johnson as the CEO. Of course, he was replaced by Howard Schultz. And every so often, when you have problems in Starbucks, you usually have the founder, Howard Schultz, trying to address the problems. Nowadays, though, we get news, and I'm going to discuss this before going to the results, the past result, and what would come in the next result. Let's understand, Starbucks just had to close a lot of LA stores, calling it unsafe to continue to operate. This is not the first store that they had to close down. A lot of stores, not just in LA, but in Seattle, in Washington. So there's a lot of states already in Starbucks locations, mostly Democrat cities, where Starbucks had to close a lot of stores, not because of profitability issues, but because of safety issues. A few things to note: Starbucks is already a 50-year-old company. Yes, you heard me right, 50. And Howard Schultz, which is 68 years old today, is still, of course, running it, although they're going to look for new management leaders when they can. As you can see, Starbucks has a lot of problems today. A few quarters ago, they were already battling with about unionization. Now, these crime rates that are forcing them to close their stores. Let's take a look. Starbucks has gone, of course, worldwide, not just in US. In UK, you've seen how European recession is, of course, a battle. Starbucks is, of course, a global company. They've got about 5,000 stores in China. They've got about 4,000 stores in Europe. And yeah, amongst those 33,000 stores, I believe about, we'll see here, they've got about 15,000 in US, 5,000 in China, 4,000 in Europe. The rest of the world is the rest, no? So before we go into the data, let's go through what's been happening. Starbucks is closing 6 stores in LA, 10 locations in other major cities because of safety issues, including drug use and threatening behavior. We are closing stores with experiences of high volume of challenging incidents, making it unsafe to continue to operate and to open new locations with safer conditions. The LA area stores stated for closure are at Hollywood Boulevard, Vine Street, Santa Monica, Westmount Drive, First and LA Streets, Hollywood Boulevard, Western Avenue. It may surprise you that nowadays crime rates are rising, drug uses are rising, threatening behavior, polarization, the polarized world, the racial discrimination, gender equality, plus, of course, the inflation. So you could also see that data is saying that coffee visits both to Starbucks and Dunkin' have been dropping as record high inflation takes hold. Now, between Starbucks and Dunkin', obviously Starbucks is less affordable than Dunkin'. So you could see that Starbucks had a bigger drop in terms of monthly visits versus Dunkin'. If Starbucks had a drop in May 2022 of 2%, in June you're seeing 6.6%. Compared to 2021 during the pandemic, actually Dunkin' had a loss of 7.8% and Starbucks was 4%. We could argue that in compared to 2021 and compared to 2019, there's still a lot of dilemma in Starbucks. So Starbucks and Dunkin' both having impact due to inflation. And I would show to you a lot of competition worldwide. Starbucks today is mostly beverage led, but you could see that competition has heated everywhere else in the world with Starbucks and Coca-Cola's Costa Coffee, Tim Hortons of Canada. Take note that in India, it's getting even more competitive with Pret a Manger working with Reliance Industries to be the biggest franchise partnership. Reliance is the country of India's biggest retail chain. Reliance Industries is also the partner of Facebook. In India, with 1.3 billion population, it's obvious that the most affluent 50 million can be catered into. And Starbucks is more food led. And sorry, unlike Starbucks, which is more beverage led, the competition of Pret a Manger wants to be more food led. Pret a Manger is a French word for ready to eat. This opened in London and now has 550 global outlets. I would say that with coffee now being a staple, it is more and more commoditized. I would argue that the business ahead is very difficult for Starbucks. And we have to understand the behavioral challenges. During the pandemic, a lot of people, the secular trend continues to be working from home or a hybrid work setup, evidenced via less and less people going towards the offices. So that is, of course, going to affect a lot of Starbucks foot traffic sales, which is going to be a difficulty for their next 10 years. Yun. So those are the things that you have to understand. Now, about America, Starbucks being a homeless shelter, this was an opinion article actually about 4 years ago, wherein some people from Fox News actually felt that it was Starbucks' decision on a very small metric to become very big that actually became their undoing. So take note that in 2018, there was actually two young African Americans who was allegedly refused to leave, and were asked to leave a Starbucks in Philadelphia simply because they couldn't use a restroom. Starbucks felt that this was very racist, and so Starbucks instead, which is very known for being democratic, went into actually making a policy where they allow anyone to spend time in their stores using restrooms, regardless of whether they make a purchase. Now, I'm not saying that Starbucks doing good is not a bad thing, but because of this policy, a lot of people have used the cafes to become their offices and using their free Wi-Fi and sometimes even using the bathroom to do ungodly things, say drug abuses or whatsoever, which of course is a negative towards your paying customers. So the journal even said that employees today in Starbucks have a detailed instruction on how they can handle people who are smoking, using drugs or alcohol, even using restrooms improperly or sleeping. So you could see that Howard Schultz, by being too democratic, actually made a lot of problems. That is now being the root cause as well of why Starbucks today has been unsafe. Okay, so a few things to note. I don't want to share all the negative news, but what is Starbucks today compared to 10 years ago, even if it is a 50-year-old company already since 1971? Okay, in the first quarter of 2022, we could see that the global sales of Starbucks actually managed to increase. You could see that store sales increased 13%. Average ticket sales managed to rise 3%. This was last quarter. The US sales increased 18%. International store sales decreased 3%. Offset in comparable transactions. Most of the adverse impacts came from the international, particularly China. Here, they're saying that their GAAP operating margin managed to still go up from 13.5% to 14.6%, mostly because of business recovery. Um, but let's take a look at these. All these positive news last quarter is unlikely to continue this coming quarter. If you ask me, the reason, of course, is the primary inflation pressure. So, inflation, let's take a look what exactly has been happening. Says here that consumers spend 40% of their monthly food budgets on restaurants. Now, this is great if you are a restaurant, but as you can see, Starbucks is a beverage-led company, not a place where you eat too much, no? So this is you're seeing grocery prices going up, and the economics between dining out in restaurants and using groceries to make a meal today, some executives are saying aren't so different anymore. Of course, with Starbucks, you could argue not true because Starbucks is a more expensive option, obviously, versus just preparing coffee at home. As budgets have been tightening, respondents in a survey in America said they are likely to just pull back on streaming subscriptions, concerts, sporting events before reducing the restaurant spending. This is also true that they would give up on new clothes. They might forgo traveling. They might also eliminate the gym, all in favor of going out to eat. So, of course, the market is looking ahead, and the market believes that recession is here, if not next year. So, if ever this recession is going to be at play towards the markets, we do expect that the earnings, which will be released for Netflix next week, is likely to still be not as good as what people would expect. Now, you might argue that most of the stocks have gone down and might not actually warrant further sell off. We beg to disagree, although, to be very fair, we aren't shorting Netflix at 175 or $180. More because there are other stocks that seem to be still near resistances that are more favorable to short. Okay? But you could see that there's a lot of headwinds that will take time in our view. So, more or less, let's read more news here. The economy is still trying to tame the spiking inflation. You've got the Fed tightening aggressively. The big questions today are in the housing sector. You're seeing that housing today is less affordable. Rising mortgage rates, which have spiked, are making some buyers cancel home purchases. We are actually short a lot of home builders like D.R. Horton, Lennar. Um, we actually think that there continues to be more risk on still in Zillow, even as the stock has already fallen more than 80%. So a lot of shoes that could still drop, and it's mostly going to be rooted towards your home, rentals. A lot of people continue to believe that there's still leeway to fall because of economic uncertainty, and I don't expect actually to for people to mostly spend more, and that's the reason why the markets have been very bearish, particularly on Zillow and on credit card firms like buy now pay later firms like Affirm. Unfortunately, any rallies on these two stocks will continue, in my view, to be sold rather than bought. You can see here in the streaming services, of course, you've got a lot of competition. Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, Prime Video. Today, we just got word that Netflix works now with Microsoft for their ad tier platform. But you can see that Netflix, between the rest, is still trading at a very relative high subscription per month versus Disney Plus. So in terms of getting subscribers to continue their subscription, even if you might argue that this one is just a $10 monthly subscription, because the rest are lower, HBO Max, Disney Plus, people might actually want the options to try out the other content. So these are a few things to watch out for. Actually, we aren't just bearish on Netflix. To be fair, I think that every streaming giant today has a problem. So even HBO Max, if you believe that Warner Brothers is going to be up or Paramount Global, I would be disagreeing that, as these are the sectors that are really the easiest to cut from from a family that really just wants to save money. So be a little bit careful. You might argue that these are just little amounts. It's just $100, $200, but these are the ones that are easy to cut and easy to unsubscribe from for a consumer. Now, a lot of people are saying that Costco, particularly Deutsche Bank, is saying that Costco will stay hot even as economy slows. My argument is not true though. With Costco, we analyzed this one trading at about $500, even as it can rise 550. Is currently trading more than 30 to 40 times multiple. Yes, the sales continue to be strong. Actually, they just released last 5 weeks of data around July 7, and it was actually very good, which prompted a lot of analysts to maintain their overweights, their buy targets on Costco. But I think that the upside is very limited for Costco, because if an American, or not just Americans, but Canadians, a lot of people in the world are still going to spend in grocery, I agree. But you might actually think twice of paying a lot or spending a lot. And Costco's pricing today is not as a value stock. Costco is trading today more than 30 times multiple. And actually, a lot of premium is being paid towards Costco today due to that quote unquote resiliency of the consumer. I disagree. Inflation affects everyone. Costco is not immune. The biggest ticket drops for these would still be, of course, the other retail giants. You would see that Amazon, Target, and Walmart will, of course, be reporting their numbers. Well, Costco might argue that they will be less on a downturn. I don't think that a lesser decline warrants a very premium valuation. So it's really more of a valuation call there. Pinterest shares are soaring after report that Elliott Management has acquired a 9% stake. While some people who are bullish on Pinterest might take this news as a positive, I would argue that Elliott Management used to have a stake before on Twitter, an activist role around 2020 and 2021. I don't think Elliott Management can really turn around Pinterest shares on an upside without advertising truly growing at a high clip. Our view here is that this 15% rise so far on Pinterest might actually be subject to a lot of sell-offs at $22 or $23, as the business model of relying on digital advertising continues to be murky. If, however, Pinterest gets to be integrated with a lot of shopping and becomes an e-commerce marketplace, say a little Etsy or a little Amazon, that might change the world. We'll see how things play out. But if Pinterest today, which largely is just making money from digital advertising, will continue to rely on digital advertising, I don't think this good news is something that will make me think that this is a bullish reversal to the upside that will be sustained. But it's just a short-term uptick wherein you wait for a resistance, say $22, as I said, 22 to 23, then it's probably just going to go down yet again and retest 18 and 17 and so on. Now, a lot of people were saying that if you're bearish in China, what do you think about BYD and Li Auto? The thing about China is that right now we are of the view that there seems to be some resiliency and strength, specifically in the Chinese electric vehicle sector. This may be brought about by China pledging $220 billion of stimulus bonds towards the green energy. And most people might actually view that green energy bond potentially bullish towards the car manufacturers of China, which could lead China into a potential one of the large car manufacturers of EV in the world. BYD, having its battery segment, of course, is leading. You could see that despite a recession worldwide, BYD is outperforming, and the sense that this has reversed to the downside, in my view, isn't there. Technically and fundamentally, we know that BYD company is partnered with Apple for Apple cars. So actually, what I want to happen over the next 3 quarters is for BYD to show to me whether this leadership is real, and I wouldn't be surprised if next year BYD actually might actually be an all-time high versus say Tesla hitting lower highs. I'm not saying that BYD is resilient. I just think that there seems to be an outperformance, particularly in BYD, maybe because the government is favoring them. Um, and the charts actually say that the story anyway. Li Auto is also showing a clear path towards dominance. We saw in the May sales 2022 that Li Auto was actually top 5 sales. So you can see that Li Auto outperformed Neo and Xpeng, and we are bearish in Neo, but we're actually bullish in Li Auto and BYD. I think like in terms of car manufacturers, it's all about the data. The data says that Li Auto has been growing with their vans, no? So we will see how the monthly sales stack up. Tesla's numbers will come out next week, July 20. Something for us all to keep in mind. All I'm saying is that the markets would be a mixture of data and earnings reports, but I just want you to be more careful on the data that comes out to you and how to assess it. Let's go through a few of the interesting charts that I can share to you, if ever. So we argued that there's a lot of money today that has been going towards healthcare. As I said, Bill Gates seems to be spending a lot in healthcare. Let me show to you that amongst the long ideas that we are looking at these names today, mostly the CRISPR related names. You could see that Editas today has rallied from about $10 here since May to as high as 15, 16. Now, the thing about these innovation is that we do not believe that they have to be profitable. What is needed is that CRISPR gets released to the masses by partnering with drug makers over curing heart diseases, or in this case for Editas, curing the blind. So I think that if you check even just the simple chart here, Editas here at about 10 to 15 is looking to be carving a bottoming out zone, while there remains a lot of resistances here, 20 bucks, 26. I offer you the outperformance to be as part of your relative strength indicators. A trader should be aware that when the world is all bearish, that it is that a rose among thorns is something to be paid attention to. Okay, so this is one of the roses among the thorns. Editas looking to be upwards. Intellia, let's take a look at that. Take note that Intellia Therapeutics also on the upside, 39 to 63. This is a nice looking flag, bullish flag that could actually hit as high as 75 or 100. Dips here at about $50 is looking to be more of a buying opportunity rather than a selling zone. And you can see that we are still seeing that gap up before. We're actually just trying to be near that 2021 pricing for Intellia. Now I remember Intellia here gapped up because of a patient clinical trial that was successful. And as I said, these therapeutic drugs companies may actually work with them. For instance, we just saw a news that Vertex Pharma is now in cooperation with CRISPR to work with heart disease drugs. You're seeing that in a world of bearishness, what's happening to Vertex Pharmaceuticals? Trading at all-time highs. So there is obvious outperformance here, and we can see that the trend towards investing more towards healthcare seems to be quite very strong. Look at what's happening to CRISPR here. I am obviously I have a long position in CRISPR. I started buying this last night actually here at about $80, and I wanted to buy more if it ever drops here about 75, 76. Initially, I thought that CRISPR's rally was overdone, thinking that it would be just a normal rally where a previous resistance would be sold into. What I can clearly see here, though, is that if the resistance is not being sold into and the overall sector is actually growing bullish, particularly because of the applied innovation in healthcare that's utilizing all the IPs or the intellectual property of CRISPR therapeutics, then it is highly likely that these stocks may actually be on the verge of a bullish reversal that you have to pay attention upon. So, in a world where everyone's bearish, please be careful to actually pay attention as well to your charts on whether their bearishness is warranted or if their bearishness is late already. We talked about Starbucks actually having lower indicators of sales next few months. And in my view, actually, Starbucks looks to be a good selling area here at 80 bucks. Take note that around April and May, Starbucks was also lower highs, lower lows. So it was trading at $92. Should Starbucks actually go against you in the short term and actually manage to rally from 78 to 84 or 92, please go ahead and continue short here at 88 and 92, as there are several resistances, particularly the unions. One of the big problems of Starbucks as well was you can see that this $90 area is the same price as well of Starbucks here, where the sales revenues in 2020 was about $7 billion. So right now, the sales of Starbucks is 8 billion estimate, and if it actually happens to become $7 billion or lower, you might actually get downgrades. So the estimates for Starbucks remain high, and the thing about estimates is that either they are late or they will get downgraded very very soon. So on August 2, which is the expected earnings report for Starbucks, we are of the bearish view. Starbucks is trading at about $90 billion market cap and at about 3 times price to sales, trading at about 30 times PE ratio, doesn't appeal as cheap even from that metric alone. So you've got, in my view, downside either back to 70 or 60 or even 50, where Starbucks actually had a pandemic low. Now, obviously, some people would argue that they would buy Starbucks for the global brands and their pivot on drive-thrus and innovation. The ability to have a lot of Starbucks loyal member cards is also a plus. But with headwinds, as I said, the trend remains still your friend. Unfortunately for Starbucks, the trend of high inflation is detrimental towards their business. So and even if you've got people going back to the offices, if hybrid work is now normal, that return to office is not going to bring back the same types of sales that Starbucks used to have here in 2019 to 2022. The only way to correct the bearishness in Starbucks, in my view, is if China truly is growing in huge leaps and miles, as Starbucks today has been growing a lot in China. But that's actually still a question mark. There's a lot of discrepancy in China COVID policies today. GDP continues to be lower, contraction. So be a little bit careful as there seems to be there's more negatives than positives for now. Um, what am I doing? Okay, we are shorting, as I said. No, let's take a look at a few ideas here if you want to know. So Starbucks, I would be shorting 80 to 88 to 90. We'll take a look at a short there. Nasdaq, we covered last night when it hit 11.5. Today, 11.8 or 11.9. I will continue to short it. New York Times, in my view, if a Netflix subscription is bound to be cut or a Disney streaming, then a New York Times doesn't seem appealing either. And it is, in my view, a good short. I am bearish on digital advertising, and so Endeavor EDR is also a short idea. Endeavor has spent their IPOs to buy online gambling, but as you can see, surveys tell you that online gambling and online casinos would also be less and less going forward, suggesting that over the next 2 to 3 months or even in the next 6 months, I view EDR to be trading on a lower high. So any rally of Endeavor near 22 or 25 here is more of a short idea to me. Also, I believe the digital advertising industry is bound to decline with lower sales. And so unfortunately, we can argue that with companies going into the digital realm, um, and looking to continue growth in digital realm, I think tonight's Google is gonna be even the stock split of Google is still gonna be more of a sell order at 2-4, because the headwinds would be still remaining. Google or Alphabet is still trading quite at a high valuation here, so you've got actually headwinds next few weeks. You've got the earnings coming out for a lot of your fangs. We're not bullish on any of the fangs, and actually even Apple, surprising with a positive movement last night because of Taiwan Semiconductor. I actually view these rallies at 149 and 151 for Apple to be mostly a sell order. So we are mostly doing sell orders, especially on your index, with only a few minor longs on the biotech space. On the biotech space, mostly on the genomics, but it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with profitability, but more about partnerships. I see a potential for partnerships in companies that have research into the genomic space and a lot of patient data. So we're seeing actually that strength in companies like Invitae rallied from 2 to 3. Any drops here at about 2.4, 2.5 looks to be an entry point on Invitae. I like Intelia, CRISPR, and Edit as my play for genomics. So I'm entering through those three names: Intelia, CRISPR, Edit, even Beam. Forgot to say, yes, Beam Therapeutics, which is using CRISPR technology and base editing, has been usually being been used by oncologists worldwide to solve cancer. So as more and more development with AI, and I think that drug discoveries are happening and a lot of partnerships. The thing I want anyone here who wants to be on the long side to do is to watch for data coming out in these sectors. Either it has to be healthcare spending or a healthcare partnership, or a drug discovery, similar to what's happened with CRISPR and Vertex. So the more that CRISPR gets to the masses, and not just a scientific experiment available towards Bill Gates and the richest people in the world, my sense is that we will see how Cas9 and base editing will save lives. And that would be a huge boost towards the share prices of the companies like Beam. This was, of course, true for companies like Moderna before, when they actually got the solution or the vaccine, the cure for vaccine. I shared to you that during that March 2020 era here, or even in April, if you simply bought Moderna when it actually said that it had a potential cure for the COVID vaccine, that was you buying at about $20 or $30. And even in today's prices, 2 years after, although it rose to about $350 to about $450 here, even if you say sold here at 350, you still need 10x. So there's actually, in my view, a lot of opportunities more on the upside for biotech. So for ARCG, we're also bullish now, buying it at about 36. You could see that very bullish movement from 26 to 36. That was a $10 move. And this is really a healthy pullback, such that if you ask me, if there is any ARC fund that Kathy Wood manages that I would be bullish upon, it will be ARCG. So far, I'm really seeing that ARCG, all of the companies in this realm might actually be on the upside. Um, but really, if I was just a bull on genomics, I don't need an ETF. You can just buy CRISPR, Editas, and Intelia, or Beam, those four. You don't need, I think, a lot of companies. Just four is enough. Others like to also take a look at the biotech LabVIEW, also seeing that bullishness. LabVIEW here at about four is now rising at $8, 860. We're now on the bullish side here, looking to implement buys in the healthcare sector. We're only bullish so far in a few names, but people ask me as well, Nikki, is there a company that you believe in a secular trend format? And I said that climate change, I never really disappeared, no? So for climate change, what we usually do is just simply buy low and sell high. Right now, for solar names, we have been shorting here at about $300 for Solar Edge. But come the time that Solar Edge goes here to about 220, that's where I will start to buy. So I am bullish still on microinverters. I am still bullish on Enphase, but it has to go down here to about $140 before I buy. So Enphase, whenever it rallies about 220, though, we think that the market is worried about their valuations, and therefore they are actually trading within a range. The valuation is really the problem in most of the solar firms, as the markets are of the view that if the subsidies end, maybe there will be less and less Americans that would actually make a solar home, if ever, or those types of things. I don't agree that demand will go down, since all the government has been pretty much bullish into investing towards the solar sector. But you have to just simply be careful of the valuations. Was that What does that mean, no? Although Sun Power, I shorted here at about $18 recently. I have the view that here at about 16 below or 14, you often have a buy. So if you'll notice, Sun Power this year continues to trade in a single range, buying at about 13s and then selling here about 20. So I am not as bearish as the world may think towards the solar sector. And in particular, we can see the outperformance in particular to Jinko Solar. So Jinko Solar is your Chinese solar panel maker and benefits, of course, with the tariff panel duties being exited by Biden's administration. So although there was that initial resistance on Jinko Solar at 77, if you ask me if Jinko Solar trades here about 55 if I'm a buyer, the answer will be a yes. As long as Jinko Solar trades with higher lows here, I'm of the view that it's more of the trend will be on the upside for Jinko Solar, as well as this photovoltaic maker, JCL. Actually, we are seeing that this could actually hit all-time highs within the year or next year. So yeah. So yun. Actually, I don't believe in having a bearish view or a bullish view. It all depends on the prices, no? So if it's very high, then I wouldn't be buying overbought, no? So that's about it. Let's take a look at your questions, if any. Virtue signaling Starbucks, perfect on their leftist customers and workers. Are there plans to lessen the cost of EVs for them to become bullish? China did that. China did the subsidies for that. Rural in China got at least, I think, 4,000 yuan for every car. I remember that a $40,000 car, with all the subsidies of the government, almost 10 to 20% cheaper if you buy a Chinese car. That's also one of the reasons, in my view, why the Chinese electric vehicles continue to have demand. But as I said, it is a little bit murky. We get mixed data in China because we don't know how many cars would have to be sold in order for the stock price to go up. Because as it is, a lot of these Chinese car manufacturers are trading at losses. So, for instance, to give you an overview, why am I short NEO? NEO is losing about $250 million a quarter. So, even if you tell me that there's an EV subsidy, I don't think that is enough to make me buy NEO. No, so I have a short on NEO. We have been bearish on EVs, um, particularly NEO, because it is low sales, notwithstanding the accounting fraud that's been discussed by Grizzly Research, no? So even in just the three cars alone, NEO, XPEV, Li Auto, the best there is Li Auto. The data tells you that, the technicals also tell you that. So who am I to know more than what the charts are saying today? Um, there has been a lot of subsidies on the solar firms, in particular by the elimination of tariffs. So that's the reason why Jinko Solar has been going up. When it comes to cheap solar panels, the best pa rin yung China. So even if you tell me which solar panel to buy, it has to be China. No, now there has been issues in the past. A lot of people were saying that China was using forced labor na ang bata-bata ng mga yon, or some of them are the Muslim Chinese that were persecuted and being forced to work in the solar plants. Um, those were the allegations given by Joe Biden. I don't know, diba, whether it's true or not. I think you've seen naman in the past that Apple daw or Nike used child labor and sweat labor. Um, think that from a business standpoint, a lot of people would argue that there has been a lot of human rights issues with China. And I'm not here to say that there has been none. I would argue na malamang the human rights issues are true. But for the world who wants cheap solar panel makers, perhaps they are just blinded by the fact if they think that cheap solar panels can be made in USA. Cheap solar panels, in my view, are a function of cheap labor, whether that is using child labor, forced labor. I think it's part of the mix. So, yon. There's a question, Jets ETF. So far, no, Delta Airlines have reported their numbers, and we are of the view na there seems to be a lot of supports naman in travel, but the biggest problem of Delta Airlines is that their earnings fell short. That's the reason, guys, why Delta Airlines isn't moving as high as you may wish. Because, yes, Americans are traveling, pilots are overworked, pilots are demanding higher wages. Some CEOs in airlines are actually getting killed, or, well, not killed naman, but not literally killed. But some CEOs in airlines, I see that they are getting grilled by Congress on how to handle, especially the July 4th weekend last couple of weeks. My sense here is that you don't have a super clear view on the business of travel, because if the government is still having these issues with the, actually the government already fixed the COVID piecing. The problem is most of these pilots and airlines are overworked kasi nga massive during the pandemic, maraming finire na pilots. Now naman, they're being hired yet again because apparently malakas yung travel. So we've got mixed data though, because while the short-term traveling is really strong, the question mark next year is, do you think that recession, people will still travel? So I think like it's a mixed data. The rich will continue to travel, obviously. But those who have a harder time getting laid off might actually postpone a travel. So in the airlines, I would be of the siguro neutral. I'm not bullish, I'm not bearish. Wait for data. Yes, let's understand that marami naman nagsabi that China really doesn't care about human rights. Eh. I mean, the fact that China bought oil from Russia already tells you a lot, di ba? So, if the China-Russia relationship was still solid even after the war, yung mga human rights issues sa Uyghurs, napapalampas nila yan. Or, ewan ko, I know it's bad. I'm not condoning that you should buy China goods. Pero for people who believes that gusto nila ng mura and yet gusto mo ng mura tapos magagalit ka, hipokrito ka lang. Yun lang sinasabi ko. Hindi ko sinasabi na wag natin gustuhin na mura yung oil. Wag natin sabihin na, I mean, that's life, okay? I'm not condoning what happened in the war. Pero without the relationship to Russia, China would not have been able to buy oil at cheap prices. And China is exporting their cheap goods worldwide, which benefits the Filipinos kahit papano. So you have to think of things not as black and white, but as gray, because the world is really gray. Yun lang. Okay. I think that the world is in pain. And all I can tell you is that we are positioned mostly light lang sa cash, light lang din sa longs, konting-konting longs lang, only in the healthcare sector. If you will really go long, kailangan leader. So, I'm sure na if long ka sa mga BYD and 2015, baka natatakot ka rin kahit na leadership na yon. Jinko Solar, medyo strong yan. 3800, very strong yan. Pero, to be honest, because the path of least resistance worldwide is on the negative side, there's nothing wrong about mostly shorting the market. There are easier shorts in the world, obviously. If you short the companies that, in my view, are overvalued or priced with a very high valuation, you have more certainty to be right. So consider the fact that three times, through four times price to sales in Starbucks might be a question mark on why it will go up. There's also, in my view, ako lang, I'm asking the question mark. I'm gonna put a red flag on some companies like Kura Sushi. I have a red flag on New York Times. I've got a little bit of a red flag on Costco if it's trading at $550. We openly share naman our views. If you follow me on Twitter, Faces Trader, you can see na we short whenever it's rallying, we short, and that's how we survive 2022. We actively short and we actively take profits. Hindi kami yung parang, oh, down na ng 25% yung stock, hindi pa rin cover. I've shorted some meme stocks. I have some shorts on GameStop, in case you're wondering. At 130, 140, 150, I am looking to be on the short side there. I have shorted this pump and dump company in China, 1797. I shorted at 19. Binantayan ko yan nung nag-10x move yan, $3 to 32. I asked myself, but nagka $30 yung Coolern? What was the reason? The reason was the teachers were selling, instead of teaching English, kasi nga bawal na magturo ng English in China, these teachers were going e-commerce. They were selling groceries, no, through YouTube or through Douyin, basically through Douyin, the app of these platforms. A Douyin copycat. There's always, in my view, a sense that people want to pivot their business if their business isn't doing well. But you often have to ask yourself, is that pivot truly game changing? So I am skeptic of 1797, and so I'm skeptic as well of the subsidiary, which is New Oriental Education, which rallied here from 10 to 24. Might actually be a good short. You are not, of course, if you have been following the channel, we've said now we were bearish on cryptocurrencies, and when we continue to remain bearish, we think that Coinbase rallies are still going to be short-lived. To be honest, bagsak pa rin yan. If it rallies $60, may bebenta dyan, $70. If MicroStrategy rallies above 220, it will still be shorted. There still remains a lot of difficulty. So to tell you na it's time to buy would be very unrealistic. Not unless you are buying something, yun nga, in the biotech space. Maybe sa biotech. A little bit on China, I would agree, pwede rin. Okay? So, thank you very much, guys, for watching. And I hope that you like, subscribe, and share. Please remain on the lookout for data, because only when you have data, you can be able to have better informed decisions, no? We know that the data is not complete, and all data that's given to us is also going to be noisy. Nonetheless, mako-corroborate mo naman lahat yan eh. If data tells you that Americans continue to spend, and yet that data is last quarter or last year, it doesn't make sense, no? The question is the data you're looking at for next quarter or next year? Kasi even if Delta Airlines or Airbnb, for instance, let's assume lumabas na yung income, good quarter, so what? What's the forward, diba? If you believe that going forward, Americans will probably spend less, that means that companies that continue to assume that spending will continue might be on the wrong opinion, wrong estimates. Retail, problema yan. Maraming retail continues to go new lows. Okay. I don't know about this coalition between the BRICS, yung Brazil, Russia, India, China. Kasi on the Brazil, Russia, India, China, I don't know what they are gonna do. Whatever it is, recession is the big topic here, and recession takes time. Whether it takes us 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I do have to tell you, fortunes will be born in the next 3 months or 6 months or years. So when the market is bearish, I disagree na hindi tumingin. Kasi I can find leaders in a bear market. And if you really want to short in a bear market, okay rin lang. The point that I'm saying is that to people who say that bears cannot make money, that's not true. Bears make money, bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered. If you're a true bear, laki ng kinita mo this year. So, how could you say bears don't make money? Diba? Bye-bye. Thanks.